Welcome to the podcast de Philippe, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive on something pretty important. I'm talking about the European Accessibility Act, or as everyone calls it, the EAA.
That's right.
And the next few minutes, we're going to really break down what it is, what it means for businesses, and why embracing this thing can seriously boost your customer experience and even open up some cool new opportunities.
Yeah.
We'd really appreciate it if you could head over to our YouTube channel and give us a subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers today, so every little bit helps. All right, let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
So, we hear EAA, we hear accessibility. What does it actually mean for someone like me, running a business?
Well, the EAA is like a big deal for any business, I'd say, that wants to work in the EU. It's all about making products and services accessible, and they're really serious about it this year. Like June 28th is coming up.
Oh, wow.
And then by 2030, they're making even more things accessible. So it's a global thing. If you're dealing with the EU, you got to pay attention.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit.
Yeah.
What exactly is the EAA? Like, in simple terms.
So basically, imagine trying to make all the different countries in the EU agree on the same accessibility rules. That's what the EAA is doing.
Okay.
It's bringing everything together for both physical stuff and digital things. So it's, building on what's already out there, but making it an EU-wide standard.
I see. So it's kind of like a baseline, but are the rules kind of like, super strict, or is there any wiggle room?
Yeah, it is a minimum standard. That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
Like a foundation. Every EU country has to at least meet that.
Right.
But some countries can decide to be even stricter if they want to.
Yeah.
So if you're doing business in, let's say, France and Germany, you got to know the EU rules, but also what those specific countries might have added on.
Okay, it's good to know.
Oh.
So when we say products and services, what are we really talking about here? Give us some examples.
Well, think of anything in ICT. That's information and communication technology. Your website, your apps, online stores.
Right.
It could even be a physical ATM or a kiosk.
Wow.
Then you have stuff like ebooks and videos. So anything a customer uses to interact with your business, that's what needs to be accessible.
That's a lot. Okay, so who exactly needs to be thinking about this? Who is the EAA really aimed at?
The main focus is on people in the EU with disabilities. And there's a lot of them. We're talking 135 million people.
Wow.
And we're using the UN definition here. So that includes anyone with a long-term thing that makes it harder to fully participate in society, whether it's physical, mental, sensory, you name it.
So this isn't just for European companies then, right?
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
Any business that's selling in the EU has to follow these rules.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if you're in the UK, North America, or anywhere else. Now, it's mostly focused on consumers. So B2B and B2G, that's a bit different. They have their own standards.
Right.
But for anyone selling directly to people in the EU, you got to be EAA compliant.
So are there any exceptions to the rule? Where a business might not have to worry about this?
Well, there are a few, but they're pretty specific. Micro enterprises are exempt. So that's if you have less than 10 employees or you're making under 2 million euros a year.
Okay.
And there's this thing called disproportionate burden. Basically, if a company can prove that complying would just be way too expensive, but good luck proving that.
Yeah.
You really got to have a rock solid reason.
So it sounds like for most businesses, complying is pretty much a must. What are the deadlines? What dates do we need to remember?
So the law's been around since 2019, but the big date everyone's talking about is June 28th this year, 2025.
Okay.
That's when enforcement really kicks in.
Right.
And then by June 28th, 2030, the EAA is expanding even more. So it's important to know that anything new you launch after June 28th this year, it has to be accessible right out of the gate.
So when you say new, what does that exactly mean?
Well, yeah, it could be a totally brand new product or service,
Okay.
but it also includes big changes to what you already have. Oh, like let's say you revamp your website's landing page or you change a bunch of stuff on your online forms. That could be considered new and you'll need to make sure it's accessible.
I see. So even big updates can trigger these requirements. What about all the stuff you already have out there? What happens to older content?
Right. So there are a few exceptions for things that were already out there before June 2025, like some pre-recorded media, office file types, online maps. Those might not need immediate action.
Okay.
But usually that means you got to provide the key info in another format that is accessible.
Okay.
Now, third-party content, stuff you don't control or pay for, that's usually okay.
Right.
And if you have archive content that you're not going to touch after June 2025, you might be okay there too. But there are some things, certain services or like those ATMs we talked about, that get a bit more time to comply because of how long they're supposed to last.
It sounds complicated, to be honest. What does actually complying look like? What should businesses be doing?
You can't just slap an accessibility label on something and call it a day. You have to show that you're thinking about this from the start.
Okay.
Having a plan, documenting it, and actually doing it. The smartest move is to make accessibility part of your design and development process right from the beginning, instead of trying to fix it later. It's way cheaper that way, too.
So build it in, not bolt it on.
Exactly.
What kind of documents do you need?
You should have a roadmap for accessibility.
Right.
What are your goals? How are you going to get there?
Okay.
Make sure your team knows their stuff. Have training programs. And you need to prove you're meeting the industry standards, like WK 2.1 level AA for web content, EN 301549 for ICT in general.
Lots of acronyms.
Right.
Okay, so planning, training, documents, all important stuff. But what if someone doesn't do it? What happens if they don't comply?
Well, each EU country gets to decide their own punishments, but generally you're talking about fines. And sometimes they might even name and shame you publicly. In Ireland, they can even send you to jail if it's really bad.
Wow. Jail time. That's serious.
Sure.
Are the fines like the same everywhere in the EU?
No, they're all different. It depends on the country,
Yep.
but they're supposed to be big enough to make you think twice about not complying.
Makes sense.
The maximum fine can be a percentage of what your company makes in a year or a fixed amount. And in some places, if you keep ignoring the rules, they can hit you with fines every single day.
So yeah, avoiding those fines is a pretty good reason to comply. But honestly, let's move beyond just avoiding punishment. What are the real benefits here? How can making things accessible actually improve customer experience?
Oh man, this is where it gets exciting.
Okay.
By making your stuff accessible, you're opening your doors to a huge market. We're talking 1.6 billion people globally with disabilities. And if you add in their families and friends, you're looking at a buying power of, $18.3 trillion.
Wow, that's a lot of people and a lot of money.
Right. It's not just about being inclusive, it's smart business.
And earlier you mentioned something called the curb cut effect. What was that about?
Oh yeah, the curb cut effect. It's a cool example.
Yeah.
You know those ramps in the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Yeah, originally they were for wheelchairs, right?
Right.
But everyone uses them now. People with strollers, luggage, even if you're just a bit unsteady on your feet, they're super helpful.
Yeah.
It's the same with digital accessibility. Things like closed captions were made for people who are hard of hearing, but now loads of people use them, especially in noisy places or if they're learning a new language.
It makes things better for everyone.
Exactly. Everyone wins.
So besides this curb cut effect, are there any other advantages for businesses?
Definitely. If you think about accessibility from the start, you're way less likely to get sued later on. Plus, fixing these things later in the game is way more expensive.
Makes sense.
And think about it. When you design for accessibility, you often end up with cool new ideas that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. It's a chance to stand out from the crowd and attract more customers.
It sounds like it could really give you a competitive edge. What about customer loyalty? Does accessibility play a role there?
Oh, huge. Studies show that most people with disabilities will just leave a website if it's not accessible.
Really?
Yeah, and they're more likely to stick with businesses that get it, that make an effort.
Makes sense.
When you make everyone feel welcome and valued, they remember that. And that builds loyalty. They're more likely to come back, spend more, and tell their friends about you.
So it's about building a deeper relationship with your customers.
Exactly.
And in a world where everyone's talking about purpose, doing good, how does this impact a company's image?
People like to support businesses that care.
That's true.
If you ignore accessibility, it can really hurt your reputation. Especially now with social media, things can blow up pretty quickly. And some EU countries can even publicly call you out for not complying.
Oh, wow.
But if you're known for being inclusive, for using innovation to make things accessible for everyone, that's a powerful message. People notice that.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. It's clear that taking these EAA requirements seriously has real benefits. So for our listeners who want to get started, what should they be doing right now?
Well, I think the first thing is to really look at where you're at right now. Assess your current level of accessibility, where are the potential risks, and get the leaders on board. Make sure everyone understands that this is a priority, and weave accessibility into every part of your business, from design to development to the content you create, even customer service. And don't forget testing. Testing with actual users with disabilities, that's crucial. And keep learning. These rules are always evolving.
So if you're a product manager out there, what should you be doing?
Put accessibility at the top of your list. Bake it into your plans from day one.
Okay.
And test with real people, not just some automated tools. For designers, get familiar with those WCAG 2.1 AA guidelines. Lots of design tools have features that can help with this. Developers, write code with accessibility in mind from the very beginning. And use those testing tools, but don't just rely on them. Content creators, make sure everything you put out there is accessible. Use language that everyone can understand.
So it's a team effort. Everyone has a role to play in making this happen.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive into the EAA. And honestly, more than just a set of rules, it's a real chance to create better experiences for everyone.
I totally agree. When you start thinking about accessibility as a way to improve things for everyone, that's when the magic happens.
And that's what we're all about here on Le Podcast de Philippe. To learn more about this, do some digging online, check out the resources on the EAA.
You'll be glad you did.
We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought and some concrete steps to take. So what are you waiting for? Go make your offerings more accessible. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We're pushing for 1,000 subscribers today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next time.
See you later.